Hi, I'm Ryan Holger with TEC Tube, and today we're going to be wiring up a basic heat pump system. This is a split system, meaning that we have the heat pump system set up outside, and then we have a gas furnace on the inside. So we'll wire up the stat, the furnace, and the heat pump. The big difference here is that the heat pump has a reversing valve in it compared to a standard air conditioner. So instead of hot gas leaving the compressor and coming out here and getting rejected by the condenser coil, the hot gas leaves the compressor and it goes to the indoor coil to give us its heat. We're downstairs at the thermostat here. Right, we have wiring terminals on here that are very similar to what we do on an AC, but this is going to be slightly different because it's a heat pump. So what's the same? C for common, R for hot, same. G for fan, same. Y, pretty much the same. The wire is the same, but now just think of Y meaning compressor and not necessarily a cool call. Because when the thermostat wants heat from the heat pump, it will energize Y. When the thermostat wants cooling from the heat pump, it'll also energize Y. So Y energizes the compressor whether it's for heating or cooling, but a wire is just like an AC would. That leaves us our heating and our reversing valve that are a little bit different. Normally on this model of stat, the white wire going to my gas-fired furnace or my electric heater and my air handler would wire over to W1 and we would be done with it. But because we have a heat pump, that white wire moves over to W2. It's not a second stage of your furnace, it just happens to go to that terminal on this brand of stat. Every brand of stat is different. Ecobee, for example, the white wire would go to W1 and the reversing valve would have its own terminals not shared with W1. But in this case, white goes to W2 and I have this other one that says W1/O/B. And I have to pick one of those three things for it to mean. So my reversing valve in orange is going to wire to there. It's not going to be a W1, we're not going to use it that way. We will configure in the thermostat to make it be a heat pump and not W1. Then I got to pick O or B. O or B historically stands for orange or blue, which are the two types of reversing valve wiring colors we historically had. Every model of heat pump either runs in cooling and we have to reverse it to heating, or it runs in heating and we have to reverse it to cooling. That's why there's an O or a B. Over the years, thermostat manufacturers made that all be one terminal, and then in the stat, either in the screens or on jumpers, you make it be which one you need. So you have to know the kind of heat pump you have outside in order to configure the stat. You don't need to know it for wiring, you need to know it for configuring later on. So we have all these guys set up on here. Let's go take a look at the furnace. We're over here at the furnace. We have wires coming from the stat into the furnace, and then from the furnace back outside to the heat pump. If it was a fan coil or air handler, it would be the exact same scenario. Instead of a furnace, we just have a fan coil here, but it will work fundamentally the same way. So that's these two sets of brown thermostat wire here coming in. So right here from the upstairs, I have the wires that we just did, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wires. I already got red, yellow, white, black, and green set up on those designated terminals. There's nowhere on this board, if you can see, there's nowhere to land the orange wire. There's no O or B reversing valve. The furnace doesn't know anything about a heat pump. It doesn't know that exists, and it doesn't know anything to do with it in terms of control purposes. Going out to the outdoor unit, I have white, black, yellow, and red, 4 wires. And then orange for the reversing valve. So it's 6 coming in, 5 going out, because the heat pump outside doesn't care about the fan. It doesn't need to know anything about that. So it's 6 wires from the stat down to the furnace, including the fan, and then it's only 5 wires continuing outside. Now, the 2 reversing valve wires, the one from the thermostat asking for the reversing valve and the one from the heat pump receiving the reversing valve, since they don't go to the circuit board, they need to be wire nutted together. That's how we connect those two together. All right, so now the thermostat has a pathway for all 5 of its heat pump wires to make it from the stat all the way to the outdoors. 4 of those 5 happen to be landing on the furnace also. We're back out here at the outdoor unit. Obviously it's not outside today, it's in a lab for our video shoot. But in any case, this is an outdoor unit. This is the heat pump, as we said. I got 2 panels off. I got the electrical panel, which we obviously have to have off to wire, but we took an extra panel off just so we can point out that there's a reversing valve in here. That's the major component difference between the heat pump and the AC. It's this brass colored device. It's got 3 pipes on one side, 1 on the other. Other than that, everything else is pretty much the same as the AC. So we're going to wire this up. We can either go to the inside door to get the wiring diagram, or we can look on this circuit board and see the colors matched up, O, R, W2, Y, and C. So our thermostat wire is following the piping around, coming in the bottom of that electrical enclosure, and we have these 5 wires that we've connected up here. So we have Y for the compressor call from the thermostat, like we always have on an AC or a heat pump. And then we have black in this case as our common wire. A lot of times we use white on a regular AC, but in this case we're going to be using black because that's what we did the whole thermostat setup as. So white and black on a heat pump. And then I have these other 3 wires here. Orange is the reversing valve. So when the thermostat wants cooling, it's going to energize a signal on Y, and it's going to energize one on orange because this model of heat pump defaults to heat. So if I want cooling, it has to reverse it. If the thermostat wants heating, it would just energize yellow for the Y, for the compressor. If it wants cooling, it energizes Y and orange. Some brands of heat pump are the opposite. That's the way most do it. But some do it the opposite, and they default to cooling, and you energize the reversing valve if you want heat. It just depends on where the heat pump manufacturer evolved from over the decades and its climate zone and whether they were more concerned about heating or cooling as a priority. So that's these guys here. Compressor call, common, reversing valve. That leaves these other 2 wires here, which is white and red. White is common in this case, right? White is heat in this case, and red is my 24-volt power. Now, sometimes you need 24-volt power on the heat pump just to power up the circuit board, but even if you have one that doesn't need any power from the circuit board on there, you still need the red wire in most applications. These 2 we're going to work together, the red and the W, are going to work together. So when this unit goes into the defrost mode, this unit will make a contact closure between R and white to turn on the indoor heating system, meaning the gas furnace or electric heating coil. So heat pumps, because the indoor coil becomes the condenser and this outdoor coil becomes the evaporator, they change jobs. Condensation can form on this coil. And if it forms on this coil when it's below freezing outside, now it's going to frost the heat pump up. So it has a defrost mode. Defrost mode means it runs in cooling mode temporarily, which means this coil gets hot and thaws. When we do that, we distribute cold air on the indoor side, and nobody wants cold air in the middle of the winter. So when the heat pump goes into defrost, it energizes your other auxiliary heating source temporarily to make sure we don't get any air that's cold blowing on people on the inside. So once again, Y is for the compressor, heating or cooling call. Orange is the reversing valve to flip it from heating to cooling, or vice versa. Black in this case is common, red is hot, and white is my heat relay back out. So I need all 5 of these wires for most heat pumps. If I had a 2-stage heat pump, I would have an additional 6th wire on here. Wiring up a heat pump is very similar to wiring an AC. The 2 major things you have to think about that's differently is you have that reversing valve wire on the thermostat. So you need 1 more wire at the thermostat than you normally have. That reversing valve wire is not very likely going to terminate on your indoor furnace or air handler. It's going to just get wire knotted together and skip its way outside. And then outside, we're typically going to have 5 or 6 wires instead of 2 or 3 wires on there. So you need the ability to energize the heat during the defrost mode. Other than that, everything else is pretty much the same as wiring up an AC.